Story 1. The scene from the 1997 movie Titanic, when the band comes back to play and then you see all of the people in their rooms, particularly the mother telling her children a story as they lay in bed and look up at her like they don't know what's going on, always affects me deeply. That, and hearing the screams of the other passengers that the band has to play through. I watched the movie for the first time when I was 8 and always make sure to get distracted by something during that scene when I watch it again now. Story 2. The scene in Artificial Intelligence, where he is so desperate for the mother's love that he goes to that statue of the blue fairy and just waits for her to turn him into a real boy, so she will love him. Story 3. My personal favorite is when Carrie used her latent telekinetic powers to get vengeance on all of her high school bullies at the prom by killing most of them and completely destroying the school and half of the town in the process. Story 4. The Road, when he is sitting there about to shoot his son in the head because that is a kinder fate than being eaten by cannibals, and he only had one bullet left, so he was condemned to be eaten himself and kill his own son. Then the rest of the captives break out at the last second and they escape. That scene messed me up. Story 5. Kathy Bates breaking ankles in Misery. I watched that movie when I was young, and I still have a hard time watching anything with her in it, even The Waterboy. Story 6. One scene that will always stay with me is from Schindler's List when Oskar Schindler breaks down, realizing that he could have saved more lives. The raw emotion of that moment, seeing someone who did so much still feel like it wasn't enough, really hits hard. It's a reminder of the weight of every decision we make and how much we can impact others. Story 7. There's a lot, but if I had to pick one off the top of my head, it's the final scene in Heat. I told you I was never going back. Yeah. And then, the ultimate cat and mouse game ends with two of the best actors of their generation set against the bright lights of the airport behind. All while Moby's God moving over the face of water plays out. It stays with me not because it's shocking or sensationalist, but just because it's a perfect scene. Story 8. The one where Littlefoot's mother dies. Just hearing the music brings me back to being 4 years old and sobbing as I realized my mom was going to die someday. Story 9. Where the red fern grows, really just the entire end of the movie. Is it the saddest film ever? No. But the transition point from enjoyable coming-of-age movie to holy what the heck? No, is scarring. My 4th grade teacher made us watch that one. It will always haunt me. Story 10. I will never forget the absolute mind shock of being 11 and watching The Sixth Sense, not even knowing there would be a twist ending. It absolutely changed my brain chemistry forever. Story 11. Goodfellas, dinner in prison. I couldn't even tell you why. It's just a perfect little mini microcosm of the movie in one 2-minute scene. Story 12. The Notebook. My wife passed in 2021 from COVID-19, and 2 days before she was hospitalized. She was lying on my chest, sick as could be, and asked me the same question Ally asked Noah. Story 13. The Help. When Minnie breaks down the door to enter and help Celia while she is having a miscarriage. Minnie was a black woman who took the black and white rules very seriously, always telling Celia how they can't sit together, etc. Minnie at this time of the movie, I feel like her natural instinct was to leave when told, but she told herself, I'm not her help, I'm her friend, and brought that door down between them. To me, that's when Minnie brought the door down between them and accepted Celia as a friend. Story 14. I'm surprised nobody mentioned at least one of the many scenes from Forrest Gump. Maybe it's just me, but as far as I'm concerned, about 80% of that movie will stay with me until I kick the bucket. Now I have to watch it again. Darn it. Reddit. Story 15. The Descent, that scene with the night vision. The worst jump scare I have ever seen. I watched the movie 10 years later, thinking it would not get me this time. I was so wrong. Story 16. Neo, leaning over the side of his goo pod after waking up from the Matrix and seeing myriad other goo pods with people inside. I saw it in the theater and sat all the way forward in my seat and audibly reacted. That scene still sticks with me. Story 17. The president's speech from Independence Day always gave me goosebumps. Today will no longer be known as an American holiday, but the day when the world declared in one voice, "We will not go quietly into the night. We will not vanish without a fight. We're going to live on." Today, We celebrate our Independence Day. I'm not even American, but I'd fight for that fictional character. Story 18. English, do you speak it? Yes. So, you understand what I'm saying? My mom always said, replace Samuel L. Jackson with Pop, and you'll know exactly what it was like at that house when your uncle and I were growing up. When that scene happens, it's haunting. Story 19. The Green Mile. Mostly, I'm tired of people being ugly to each other. I'm tired of all the pain I feel and hear in the world every day. There's too much of it. It's like pieces of glass in my head all the time. Story 20. I will never forget Michael Madsen casually carving the ear off a federal agent in Reservoir Dogs to the 1972 hit Stuck in the Middle with You by Steelers Wheel on K-Billy's Super Sounds of the 70s. Story 21. There's a scene from one of the Mission Impossible movies where a woman had a mini bomb implanted in her brain and two others were working frantically to disable it because it was going to explode in 30 seconds. It looked like they were going to make it just in time, and the woman started saying, "Oh, thank you. Thank you, thank." And then the bomb goes off in her head and her face becomes horribly mangled and almost zombified. I was a kid when I saw that and it scared me a lot. Story 22. The beginning scene in Inglourious Bastard where Landa is talking to the farmer goes from somewhat humorous to dead serious very quickly, and the expressions in the scene are incredible. Story 23. The ending of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Brad Pitt, soup can to the face, head bashed off everything in the living room, pitbull attack, and Leonardo DiCaprio with the flamethrower. Wild. Story 24. Seeing The Lord of the Rings in theaters as a teenager when it came out was unforgettable. When Gandalf comes over the hills to turn the tides in the Battle of Helm's Deep, that moment was unparalleled. I have never seen a movie since that made me feel that way. Story 25. Gone with the Wind. Atlanta has burned to the ground. Scarlett has come back to Tara to find her mother dead, her father with dementia, and the Yankees took all the chickens and the vegetables out of the garden. She digs up a turnip the bluecoats missed, raises it to the sky, and says, "As God is my witness, I'll never be hungry again." This scene takes place against the background of a blazing red sunset. Story 26. Because I remember it being such a wild experience in the theaters. The Matrix. When Neo wakes up in the real world attached to all the tubes and he sees all the other humans plugged in, it was such a shocking twist that everyone in the theater gasped and reacted very loudly. It was intense. Story 27. I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. Story 28. The beginning of Signs. When Mel Gibson's wife has been in a terrible accident. He rushes to the scene, but before he can go to her, his friend stops him and tells him, gently and kindly, what he's about to see. Such an amazing thing, to have a friend who loves you enough to tell you the whole truth, no matter how bad. Story 29. The scene in Brokeback Mountain where Ennis finds out how Jack died, and his wife tells him it was an accident, but the way she explains it, you can tell they both know it wasn't. Story 30. I read Are You There, God? It's me, Margaret. As a teenager, so I was excited to see the movie when it was released. I loved the scene where everyone is getting ready for the dance, and the one friend who was black was getting her hair pressed in the kitchen by her mom. That brought up memories for me and my mom of her doing my hair the same way. She passed away a few months before I watched the movie, and I cried for a solid 10 minutes after that scene. I felt so validated that they included that. Representation matters. Story 31. In the chest paddles scene in The Thing, the intensity peaks. Then, there's the mother and son bonding scene in Color Out of Space, which adds a deep emotional layer to the narrative. Further adding to the suspense is the scene in Prometheus, where the worm wraps around the man's arm, highlighting the unpredictable dangers in their exploration. Story 32. Raising Arizona is arguably a cult classic comedy, but the end of that movie when High is Dreaming made me sob for the longest time. I think partially because it was a bad time in my life, and I imagined it was a pipe dream. But then I also thought, maybe it happens for them, and that it was really a happy ending. Story 33. Good Will Hunting. Robin Williams' speech on the park bench. The acting from both Williams and Damon is terrific, and the writing is moving. Good cinematography. It would be splitting hairs to find an issue with this scene. Story 34. In Saving Private Ryan, when the soldier picks up his severed arm off the beach, still in a state of shock about what happened to his body, that scene felt very real and raw to me. Story 35. I saw Jurassic Park as an elementary schooler. The scene of the Tyrannosaurus Rex attacking the car, with the kids just being separated from its jaws by a piece of windshield they are both trying to hold in place while screaming and crying, was definitely memorable. Story 36. They look like big, strong, good hands, don't they? I saw this in the theater as a kid, and it has stayed in my head for 40 years. Story 37. There is a scene in The Dark Knight Rises where it gets really quiet and pans over the frozen river before continuing with the film. Now, you may think, titty, that seems like a really pointless thing to have burned in your mind. Well, my friend decided that was the moment to suck on his empty Slurpee as loudly as possible, and I swear the entire IMAX theater was staring at us. Story 38. The ending of Mist was tragic. A man killed everyone in the car, including his own son, and did not have a bullet left for himself. He believed monsters were coming for them, but it turned out to be the military. The wailing cry from him was gut-wrenching. Story 39. Hereditary. Not that scene, but the one shortly after, when the audience hears the mother screaming, wailing, crying, absolutely losing her composure, rocking back and forth on the ground while saying, I can't, I want to die, I can't, I just need to die. Story 40. Overdose scene in Trainspotting. Would Sir like a starter? Some garlic bread, perhaps. No, thank you. I'll proceed straight to the administration of hard drugs, please. Story 41. The end of All Dogs Go to Heaven. Knowing that Burt Reynolds asked to re-record his lines after the murder of Judith Barcy, who voiced Anne-Marie, and the actual pain in his voice just absolutely making that scene. Story 42. Trainspotting. The baby in the crib. My heart was broken knowing this scenario has certainly happened in real life. I was almost physically ill as a mom myself. Story 43. That part in Fire in the Sky, where the aliens abduct the man and place him on an operating table and start putting needles into his eye, among other things. Story 44. The scene in Napoleon Dynamite, where Kit was trying to sell Tupperware and backs his van over a bowl in order to demonstrate its strength, is unforgettable. The bowl shatters, and Kip simply says, "Dang it," and drives off. This particular comic device slays me every time I see it, where a character just bails out in the middle of an ongoing personal interaction when something goes awry. I don't know why I find it so funny. Story 45. In the movie Interstellar, when Cooper and Brand return to the ship after being on the water planet, Cooper immediately heads to the communication station and asks for the messages. The look on his face when he finds out how long the messages go back, and seeing him watch all the messages and break down, it's burned into my memory. I could not imagine going through that. Story 46. My name is Maximus Decimus Meridius, commander of the armies of the North, general of the Felix Legions, and loyal servant to the true emperor, Marcus Aurelius. Father to a murdered son, husband to a murdered wife, and I will have my vengeance in this life or the next. Story 47. You are not your job. You are not how much money you have in the bank. You are not the car you drive. You are not the contents of your wallet. You are not your khakis. You are the all-singing, all-dancing essence of the world. Fight Club. Story 48. The final scene of The Thing, where there are only 2 survivors remaining, and they have no means of knowing if the other is an extraterrestrial or their own self. Story 49. The bathtub suicide in The Rules of Attraction haunted me for a long time. Several months later, I was at a friend's house and it was playing again. I literally had to leave the room before it started, but I could still hear the music playing and fading out. Story 50. Amistad. The scene of the slaves being pushed overboard in the middle of the ocean while tied to rocks. This was the first and only time I have ever had to shut off a movie and walk away for a while. Story 51. Armageddon. The moment when Bruce Willis manually detonates the bomb, splitting the asteroid in 2. The sound and the images shown in those few seconds are impeccable. Story 52. The painting scene from the Titanic. Draw me like one of your French girls. Oh my, how could anyone forget? My cheeks flush recalling that scene. I had such a crush on Leonardo during his heartthrob era. He was like heroin to the eye, a bona fide opiate to the loins and mind. Correction, draw, not paint. Story 53. Will Ferrell accidentally shot himself with a dart gun in Old School? I may have peed myself the first time I saw it. You're crazy, man. I like you, but you're crazy. Story 54. Oskar Schindler having a mental breakdown as he feels he could have done more to save people, and all the Jews he saved gather around him and give a group hug. Story 55. Captain America picking up Mjolnir and fighting Thanos. The Joker's disappearing pencil trick. The Rohirrim charging across the Pelennor fields. The hallway fight in Inception. Doc Holliday's showdown with Johnny Ringo. William Wallace crying, "Freedom!" Dr. Erskine telling Steve Rogers the importance of being a good man. Rorschach, "I'm not locked in here with you. You're locked in here with me." A close second, Dan's "I'm tired of being afraid" moment. Story 56. When the dad gets sucked out of the cellar in Twister, it is made even worse by the fact that if the dad had just stayed down with the family, he would have been perfectly fine. But no, he had to go and try to be a hero and ended up traumatizing my 7-year-old self. Such a reckless decision. Story 57. The scene in What's Eating Gilbert Grape, where Leonardo DiCaprio finds his mom dead in her room and slowly realizes it breaks my heart every time. Even typing this out, I'm crying. And then the subsequent scene where they burn the house down with her inside of it to save her, the family, the embarrassment of having to find a way to remove her, bury her. Just really hits me hard because I'm a mama's boy and I can't imagine thinking she could ever be an embarrassment.